world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Wednesday, the 28th of January, year of our Lord 2026. Well, we're going to look today, before we get into the updates about the police state that is spreading over this country like a cancer. Before we get into that, we're going to talk about the predictions. We got the 20th anniversary of the Inconvenient Truth, or the Convenient Lie, depending on how you look at Al Gore's documentary. We're going to take a look at that, as well as many other false predictions and lies that we've had, and there's a lot of them out there. Of course, we have predictions as well from Yuval Harari about how AI will become our new God. This is from a guy who wants to pretend that there is no such thing as God. And we have a documentary from a guy who used to have that understanding, but he started paying attention. So we're going to talk about that as well. And if you want to know where the trends are headed, we're going to have Gerald Celente joining us today on a Wednesday instead of on a Friday. So stay with us. He's going to be here to talk about war, gold, and many other things. We'll be right back. Yes, if you look at the cover of Trends Journal, here it is right here. Kent State 2.0. Nixon's National Guard killed anti-war protesters in Ohio. Trump's federal immigration officers kill anti-ICE protesters in Minneapolis. I think, however, that this is something that is really far more dangerous because they're going house to house. I showed the clip yesterday. I think this is the one here.
They're sitting here, right?
Yeah, here it is right here. Now, this was a Philadelphia SWAT team. You know, this is the militarization of the police at the local level.
I ain't got to listen to you. You ain't got to search.
And so then these guys, he's filming it. These guys come through the gate onto his property,
my private property,
and they arrest him. Now, that was back in 2021. And you're under arrest. What for? I'm filming you standing on my porch. You come way into my yard through the fence, trespassing. There was a court case about that. He only got $20,000, but he said it was a victory because he forced them to make a statement that they had violated the law enforcement. And I got to say, the most dangerous thing is not illegal immigrants. It's not even drug gangs that have been basically created by our drug war, the failed drug war. The most dangerous thing you can have is not an illegal immigrant, but illegal law enforcement, because they have absolutely no restraints upon them, and they can multiply the force, more so even than a drug gang from another country coming in. They are the most important thing to keep under control. And so we've got some documents from some people inside of ICE and Border Patrol who are fed up with what they see, fed up with the so-called training that they're getting. And the training is changing. You know, it used to be that you had a situation where the police would try to defuse things rather than shooting first. That changed under Obama. I've talked about that for many years. One of the first times we saw that was a homeless man up in the hills of, I think it was Phoenix, I think. And it was a confrontation. They wanted him to come with them. They wanted to arrest him, and he was not resisting them, but he was not complying with them. And so he was staying where he was, and he wasn't coming. So they shot him. And it was all on their body camera footage. They shot him, and then they stuck the dogs on him after they shot him. Killed this guy. And there was a guy who was had been the state instructor at the police academy, state police academy. And he resigned in disgust. He said, I've had it with this shoot first curriculum. He said, this is being pushed on us from Washington. And this is where this stuff is always coming from. It's always corruption from the top down. This country, like the Greek proverb, is rotting from the head down. So the shoot first curriculum. Now you've got a memo that has come out from the ICE bureaucrats and Homeland Security, the same McLaughlin, the same woman who was lying right off the bat, just like Kristi Noem, about what happened with these murders. And now they have put out a memo, and this is what they're training the new people that they hire. They're training them that they can go into any house at any time. They don't need a warrant. Don't need a warrant at all. We've already seen the results of this. We're moving rapidly in the wrong direction. Because of the war on drugs, every time I talk about the abuses of the war on drugs, people accuse me of wanting to have drugs. You got the wrong guy. It's such an absurd thing. It's just like, well, you don't like what ICE is doing. You probably want more Somalis. And it's like, no, you know who wants more Somalis? The Trump administration and Mike Johnson and the Republicans in Congress, because they're going to nearly double the welfare magnet for refugees. That's what they're going to do. It's $6 billion right now. They want to take it up by another $5 billion, an 80% increase. These are the people who want more Somalians because they want the chaos. They want the disorder. It is their problem that they're creating, that they are growing so they can push in their solution, which is a militarized police surveillance state. That's where it's all headed. And so we need to wake up to this. But let's begin with Al Gore and his convenient lie, his documentary that he called An Inconvenient Truth. Turns 20. Critics say the biggest disaster is not any of the disasters that it predicted, but its failed predictions. 20 years ago, it got a standing ovation at Sundance Film Festival, just like Trump just got a standing ovation by the globalists at Davos. He's not an anti-globalist, folks. Anyway, full of predictions that never came to pass. It was a key catalyst of the climate activist movement. The 2006 documentary was released and went on to, the following May, so it premiered in January, went on to gross over $25 million worldwide. Matt Wilecki, who writes about climate and energy on his Irrational Fear Substack, was once an assistant professor at the Department of Geological Sciences at the University of Alabama. In the early part of his academic career, he taught at a local college. He told Just the News that he showed An Inconvenient Truth to his students. Over time, he began to question the gloom and doom narrative that Gore presents in the film. He said people took that as a starting point, and they just kept running further and further with it. Gore's film, however, was full of numerous predictions that turned out to be wrong. It's likely that the world will not end in 2031, as Occasional Cortex predicted. Alexandria Occasional Cortex. Yeah, and it was the guy, Christopher Monckton, Lord Monckton in the UK. And he challenged that because it was used to propagandize and to scare children to death everywhere, not just in the United States, but in the UK as well. He had a court case, and he actually won the court case, proving that it was wrong. And then, right, we can see that it was wrong because none of these predictions came to pass, but he proved that it wasn't going to come to pass. But he wasn't able to get it out of the schools even then. In the court case, they said, all right, well, we will require that your rebuttal to this, your technical rebuttal, be made available to the students to see it. But what are they going to do? They're going to read a technical paper, or are they going to pay attention to a film documentary that has a visceral way of grabbing your attention? And so it's been a very, very effective piece of propaganda. Among the predictions that Gore made in the documentary is that Africa's Mount Kilimanjaro would no longer have snow on it by 2016. In 2020, the Times reported that the snow on the 19,000-foot mountain remained, despite Gore's predictions. But the documentary had caused some people to rush to climb the mountain before the snow disappeared. Instead, the tourists were surprised to find the glaciers still clinging to it. As a matter of fact, even more amazing, and I remember covering this back in 2020, Glacier National Park, because of Al Gore's documentary, they went back and you had the U.S. Geological Survey looked at it, and they went with what Al Gore had to say. And they put up signs, if you remember, put up signs saying all these glaciers, take a good look, all these glaciers are going to be gone by 2020. They had to take those signs down in 2020 because the glaciers were still there. The glaciers remained the signs were gone. But it is a sign of the times, isn't it? Gore also connected Hurricane Katrina to global warming. This is what we see happening, of course, all the time. And it's not just Gore. It's RFK Jr. saying that, his children and grandchildren will never see snow again in the Northeast. He hasn't said anything about that lately. This is the hero of the Maha movement. And he was also saying that because he was so certain of that people who were involved in the energy business should be put in jail. 3 hots and a cot. Nobody wanted to ask him about that when he was running for president for some reason. It's strange. Anyway, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, they call it, they kind of push back on this idea that the hurricanes are man-made. I would push back on that. I grew up in Florida. We had hurricanes all the time. They were not man-made. In summary, it is premature to conclude with high confidence that human-caused increases in greenhouse gases have caused a change in the past Atlantic basin hurricane activity that is outside the range of natural variability. Why don't they just point out their own statistics? You can look at the number and the intensity of hurricanes. That's recorded. And you can see that it's just natural variability. There is no trend there at all. Certainly isn't increasing. So even if there was an increase in CO2 because of man-made issues, that doesn't have any effect on it whatsoever. They play it safe like that. Why? Because they're not doing science. They're doing politics. They want grants. They want their institution to get funded and so forth. So they tell people what they want to hear. It's like the media. Meteorologist Chris March said the climate science is full of uncertainty and nuance. Yeah. It's a lot of people who are afraid to tell you the truth. Founder of the Weather Channel told you the truth with that. But I got to say, it's one of the most interesting things that I was involved in all this climate stuff. Of course, I was involved with a group that was suing Michael Mann for hiding his data. If you're doing science, you don't want to hide the data. But he had already published it, and he had worked at a public institution, and his conclusions had been used to craft public policy, but he wasn't going to give up that data. And the courts supported him in that. They were part of that cover-up. But the other big issue to me was when I went to the American Meteorological Society's convention in Austin. And literally hundreds, maybe a couple of thousand meteorologists were there with it's like a science fair where they've all got these little booths and they're showing their model. And, this is how came close to predicting it, but it wasn't quite there, right? And it was about 12 years ago. And then some of them had presentations instead of just a booth. So I went to several of those. And the uncertainty, if you're doing science, was very clear. And so, and you certainly see that with even with the weather apps today. But there was an organization there that was demanding that they use their position as TV meteorologists to get the public to be afraid of global warming. It was a joke. But they did know that, the problem is most of these meteorologists at that point in time, most of them don't buy into this stuff. And that's a problem. We can't get the public to buy into it. It's like, well, the meteorologists look at this and they say, how are we going to predict climate change, a trend 50 years in the future, let's say? We can't even tell you 50 hours from now exactly what's going to happen. And that was the case. So Arctic ice, still there over the last 18 to 20 years. There's been no trend in terms of reduction. Multiple studies on Arctic ice. Some of them predicted an ice-free Arctic. However, the ice extent in the region recedes or grows as a result of natural variability, just like the hurricanes. Predictions of cataclysms stemming from climate change regularly get reported in the media, but there's no reporting when predictions fail. For example, 2022 NBC News was one of many outlets reporting that California and the American West were in the midst of a mega drought, something we had not seen over the last 1,000 years. Of Wish you didn't see it. You weren't here. You weren't recording it. The Indians were not setting down records of rainfall and that type of thing. Earlier this month, NBC reported that California is drought-free for the first time in 25 years. The article makes no mention of the previously predicted mega drought, nor does it mention climate change. So critics respond to these failed predictions by arguing they weren't made by scientists in peer-reviewed journals. Instead, they're made by politicians or scientists in interviews. Well, it's scientists who want to get grant money. But the reality is that it's been done through the schools. That's where it's really damaging, not just in the media, because the kids don't have any defense against this. They don't have any experience. They don't have critical thinking, and they don't. They just trust what they're told.
Also, I mentioned this before, but if you get someone to believe something as a child, even if it's highly illogical, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it's proven wrong, getting them to disavow that as an adult is incredibly difficult.
Train up a child in the way they should go. When they're old, they will not depart from it. And if you train them up in the way they shouldn't go, when they're old, they won't depart from it either. It makes a huge difference, education. That's why you need to do it yourself, not turn it over to strangers and institutions. So, people appear to be more influenced by Alexandria occasional cortex than scientific data. They don't pay attention to any of that. And so we see the Green New Deal nonsense going through. And a lot of people like Al Gore made a lot of money off of this. Well, not just the Green New Deal, but let's talk about Greenland. We've got the people in Greenland have said there is a red line for the orange man in Greenland, and that is sovereignty. They're reacting to what took place in Davos. And so you have Greenland officials who said, we were not consulted about these negotiations that Trump said he did, this framework that he said he came up with. They said he talked to Mark Rutte and NATO, but they don't have any say over our sovereignty. And Denmark says they're not budging an inch on this. The reality is that what Trump is talking about is putting military bases there. This is important, folks, because it shows you how this grifter operates. He's a con man. He's a celebrity. He's a professional wrestler. He's going to, that's his whole mindset, his whole shtick that's out there. And so this is all a PR thing to distract you from the Epstein files and other things that he doesn't want you to look at. And it allows him to get combative and have conflicts with people, try to get people on lined up behind him, us versus them type of thing, divide and conquer. And then he's going to pretend that he won when he just uses the treaty that they've had since 1951. And that's it. Nothing has changed. He's always had this capability. The U.S. currently operates one base in the island, has about 150 personnel. They used to have 10,000. Trump claimed in a Fox Business interview in Davos that he was going to have total access to Greenland and all the military access that we want. Well, the defense agreement from 1951 already allows Washington to expand its footprint in Greenland with Danish and Greenland consent. Point critics say makes Trump's escalation unnecessary, except he's making the claim that he has had a conquest, a victory, a deal, and that's how they're going to spend this. That's what he does all the time. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, families are suing the U.S. over the murdering boat strikes that are there. And it's this is a different approach that these two families are doing. Families of two men from Trinidad killed in a U.S. strike on an alleged drug smuggling boat have filed a lawsuit against the American government. We are the gang that can't shoot straight. We don't even know what country these people are from, but we're killing people in the ocean without any due process, without any legal procedure. We have our own legal procedures that are very precise, as well as international law, but that is a recurring theme with the Trump administration. Utter contempt for the rule of law. So lawyers filed the claim in Boston's federal court on behalf of relatives of Chad Joseph and Rishi Samaru, among 6 men killed off the coast of Venezuela on the 14th of October. Well, the lawyer said in a statement the strike amounted to, quote, lawless killings in cold blood, killings for sport, and killings for theater. That is exactly what happened, folks. And that's why what Pete Hegseth did is so contemptible, because he makes such a show of being a so-called follower of Christ. Yet he kills people for sport, for theater, and he lies and boasts about it. The U.S. has struck at least 36 vessels in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific since September, killing more than 120 people. And some of the worst examples of it, not just instantaneously killing people without ascertaining that they violated the law even. And of course, if they violated these laws, there is no death penalty under U.S. law. As a matter of fact, the Department of Justice doesn't usually even bother with cocaine couriers. So they don't verify that these people have drugs or what drugs they are, and then they kill them for something that frequently is not even prosecuted. The U.S. has positioned its operations as a non-international armed conflict with alleged traffickers, but legal experts say they could be in violation of laws covering such conflict. So this lawsuit on Tuesday is being filed under a different procedure than some of the previous lawsuits. This is not the first time people have sued the American government for wanton murder on the high seas, but there is a Death on the High Seas Act. It allows family members to sue for wrongful deaths on the high seas. It is a statute that allows foreign citizens to sue in U.S. courts for violating international law. The case was brought by a mother and a sister of the 2 men who were killed, who say the 2 men did fishing and farm work in Venezuela. They were returning to Trinidad and Tobago when their boats were struck. And so, that's one of the things that really bothered me at the very beginning, before we saw all these people cheering the murder of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. I voted for this. This is what I want. This is great. I love this. He deserved to die. He wants Somalis in America and all the rest of this nonsense. They were saying the same kind of stuff about this. And just wanton murder. And that's what's really concerning. It's the bloodlust that people like Trump have ginned up with the mob, because he's a mobster. But that is the really scary thing. It's not just the people at the top. They've got to have people who want to kill each other down at the bottom. And that's what Trump is able to do. He's able to motivate that, along with the press that lies for him, covers for him. So one of the things that they would say was, oh, well, look, had all these memes out there. Yeah, you got to have 4 outboard engines and everything, because I've got some really fast fish that I'm trying to catch or whatever. It's like, so you killed people because of the number of outboard motors they've got on their boat? Quite frankly, if I was out there, I would want to have a fast boat. Why wouldn't you want to have a fast boat if you're going between Venezuela and Trinidad, right? What's the crime in that? That's like saying, well, we killed this guy because he was carrying a gun. Did he use that gun for anything illegal? Did he threaten anybody? Did he brandish it? Did he take it out of its holster? No. None of that happened. Oh, but it's justified to kill him because he had a gun. It's justified to kill these people because they had large outboard motors and a fast boat. So obviously they're doing drugs. Well, as Rand Paul pointed out, you can spot these boats and you might think that because somebody's got a fast boat, they're a drug dealer. But 25% of the people that are intercepted by the Coast Guard that they actually look to see if they're smuggling drugs aren't. And so if you apply that to the 120 people that they've done, think about how many innocent people they've done. Was that 30, 40 people? So the lawsuits argue that the killing should be deemed a wrongful death because the men were not taking part in any military hostilities against the U.S. government. It comes after the family of a Colombian man who was killed in a separate U.S. strike took their case to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. I think this is going to be more fruitful to do it in the United States in court, because we do have a U.S. law that makes this illegal. So I said these people have violated international law, but they've also violated U.S. law, and they have violated Pentagon policy as well, just like the so-called ICE people have violated all the rules for law enforcement, as well as the Constitution. Meanwhile, WND is focusing on, look, we have one of these open border nurses angry about ICE agents. She urges people to inject ICE agents with a drug that paralyzes and stops breathing. Paralyzes and stops breathing. Would that be like the ventilators that they were rewarding hospitals for putting people on? That they paid people handsome amounts of money? You put somebody on a ventilator, I'll give you $39,000. And I'll give you $13,000 for saying that they've got COVID. And then I'll give you another $39,000 if you put them on a ventilator, plus 20% of all the daily charges for all these things that you do out there. Who's the bigger criminal? Nowhere in this article from WND that constantly cheers Trump. They will talk about the vaccine. All of the conservative outlets, even InfoWars now, will talk about how bad the vaccine is after telling you it was sugar water. Yeah, sugar water. It's like Kool-Aid injected in your veins, though, instead of drinking it. They will now tell you about the evil of the vaccine, but they will not want to connect it to the guy who's constantly boasting about it as the father of the vaccine. And this is another example here. So, again, what about the guy who killed millions worldwide, our president? So this is in a hospital, VCU Health in Richmond, Virginia. And so libs of TikTok saw this nurse, this employee, who suggested that people inject ICE agents with a drug that paralyzes them and stops their breathing. Well, you know, somebody like that who works in the hospital has medical knowledge. If they're saying, hey, we got to kill people like this, you need to pay attention to that. That person needs to be kicked out of that hospital, absolutely, for sure. But you know, you're going to ignore Trump and all these people who push this on everyone, Republicans and Democrats. At the beginning, it was all done by Trump and the Trump administration. Then Biden took over. And he started, you know, it was Trump who bribed people, Biden who blackmailed people to do that. But of course, libs of TikTok and WND will never talk about that. That is off limits for MAGA. And yet, when you look at Trump at Davos, and I played this for you last week, but while we're talking about this, he went to Davos, of course, and he said that, I got to find this thing because it all shifted here on me. He talked about the fact that COVID was a military operation. And
so
right
it
here.
began. And we ended up with the COVID, and the whole world suffered. We did a phenomenal job. I don't think we got the credit we deserved. We did something that Operation Warp Speed, which some people say was one of the greatest military feats ever. We did a great job. Used our military, used a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Military operation. Military operation. I said that when it was happening. You know, they had, they were ready to go with the Operation Warp Speed thing. They even had in the can a 60 Minutes report. And it was all military people. Yeah, we're going to deliver it with the military. We're ready to go. Just give us a word, ready to go. Going to bring this stuff out. I said, look at this. Do people not see what this is? I mean, he's basically put us under martial law, the medical martial law. Going to have the military deliver all this stuff. He's talking about how it came from Wuhan. This is their cover story. And there were body bags. I saw it on TV, he said. Really. Strange things happening in China. And so we ended up with the COVID, the MacGuffin, actually. But Operation Warp Speed, some people would say it was the greatest military feat ever. It was always military CIA operation. It was a bioweapon that they unleashed on their own people and people around the world. He says there's things like dust flying in the air. Wherever COVID comes from, or whatever comes, sometimes you got to be a little bit lucky. This is This is a lie, folks, that's even worse than Al Gore's lies about the inconvenient truth. And it's done a lot more damage. And so they're complaining that RFK Jr., the vaccine companies are saying RFK Jr. is killing our sales of vaccines. So they're explaining that to the Wall Street investors. No, what killed your sales was everybody saw what you did with this military operation. And so they're trying to claw that back, talking now about measles in South Carolina, now larger than Texas in 2025, new data shows. Again, how do you define cases? They can't point to anybody and claim that anybody died that had measles. As a matter of fact, we go back and look at the Texas cases. Those were debunked in the sense that you saw these people had recovered. They'd had measles like a week or two before that, and then something happened in the hospital, and they denied treatment for the parents, and the child unfortunately died. But right now, they're just looking at cases. They said there were 789 cases in South Carolina. In Texas, there was just a couple less than that. They said only 20 of these 789 people sickened with measles received the full 2-dose vaccine. Why doesn't 1 dose work? But nobody has died. And why is it only after this many months? Why do they have in a situation where schools where they say it's the most contagious of any of the contagions, why hasn't it spread? Why have they had more cases than that? We used to have a lot more cases than that, I think. So how do they define the case? And do they even really know that it is measles? As the Baileys pointed out, everything about the diagnosis of measles is really dodgy. It's just as dodgy as the PCR thing. They said, well, if you got a rash, we look at it and, the rashes look very different. But if they want people to diagnose it as measles and they're telling all the doctors, measles is really going around, better be on the lookout for measles. Well, they're going to find measles whenever they see a rash, whatever really caused that. So again, 20 schools in the area had students in quarantine. So think about that. You divide that into, that's not very many students per school that have measles. So the alarmism is not really much different than all the climate fear that we see everywhere. And we're going to take a quick break. We've got a couple of comments here as well, Travis.
That's right. This is from yesterday. I just want to say thank you to Neurodivergent1. We missed it.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for the tip if you're listening. And we apologize for missing it yesterday, but thank you. Just says, here's a little something for the gas tank. Thank you so much for continuing to say things that are unpopular but true. God bless.
Thank you. Yeah,
thank you very much, and God bless you.
They are true. Yeah. Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
And Bob of Atlantis says, so far this century, you're more likely to die of lightning than measles in the United States.
Yeah.
So,
and just look at how they hype this. And that's the other thing about it. The most contagious disease we got. And yet you got a couple of dozen people that they claim have it in a school where they're all in contact with each other. Well, we're going to take a quick break, folks. And we will be right back. Stay with us.
using free speech to free minds. It's the David Knight Show.
Well, we were just talking about the COVID fraud that was there, and it's kind of interesting because every day I see more op-ed pieces about how angry Christians are about what Don Lemon did and the fact that he's been given a pass and is not going to be prosecuted under any crimes. And, of course, what they did was criminal trespass, which should be prosecuted at the state and local level. But since the state and local officials are so politicized, they're not going to prosecute them for that. It is not covered under First Amendment. He trespassed on private property. And you got a lot of these Christian opinion writers who are hopping mad. One of them, of course, is a guy who has written an op-ed piece about this, who is an elder at the church that War Pete goes to. And they're upset about the fact that they've got people who are jeering and out on the sidewalk yelling at them and said, you need to use the FACE Act. We need to shut this down. And we've been having people show up and yell and scream at our church because we won't discipline War Pete. We won't talk to War Pete. So they showed up to talk to us. And they're very rude, very vulgar, and threatening to families and that type of thing. But it's taken on a whole new aspect when they embed themselves in the church and then church building, and then during the services, they interrupt it. So we just can't have that. These are the people, for the most part. Now, it's not this church that Pete Hegseth goes to. It's out of Moscow, Idaho. It's where Doug Wilson teaches. And they did stand up to the COVID stuff, publicly defied the orders. They did the right thing at that point in time. One of the few churches that did. Al Mohler, on the other hand, was encouraging everybody to obey the government no matter what they said, and encouraging people to not only get the vaccine, but to do it, to love your neighbor, do it because it's a miracle of science, and do it because the government told you to do it. Romans 13, right? And so Al Gore is very upset. Al Mohler, is very upset about it. I have a hard time telling the difference between Al Gore and Al Mohler. Both of them I don't have a great deal of respect for their opinions. But one of the things that really disturbed me was the fact that they're pushing for the FACE Act. Since the state and local officials won't prosecute them for criminal trespass, which is what they should do, the federal government is getting into the act. And they're trying to get very creative because, the federal government really should not have any role in law enforcement. That ought to all be local and state. And so they're getting very inventive and very creative with this. And we've seen how the FACE Act was abused against people who were standing on the corner, not being rude and abrasive like the people who are yelling and screaming at those who are going into War Pete's church. Instead, these are people who are quietly praying or who are holding signs or something like that. And they got no-knock raids and people arresting them, and Biden trying to, they had the SWAT team break into this guy's home, a homeschooling father who's got like 10 kids or something, and they wanted to put him in jail for years. It's amazing. And so in light of all that, wouldn't you think that Christians would want to stand for the freedom of speech and the free exercise of religion, which is what was happening with these protesters? They were freely exercising their religion. They were exercising their speech. They were not, for the most part, on the property. There were a couple of cases where they went inside the abortion clinic. That's a different thing, and that is a trespass. But they were trying to put them in jail for decades. And that's when the federal government gets involved. They make a federal case out of everything. They make it very, very serious. And so what we saw to Christians who are simply trying to pray and to persuade people not to kill babies, what we saw was this over-the-top weaponized lawfare from the Biden administration, like they had done against people who were peacefully protesting January 6th. I know there were people who were not peaceful, and that's a different thing. But even those were cruel, unusual, and extended punishments that they gave the people who were involved in fighting with the police. That was still over the top. But it was kind of interesting. I saw that Matt Trojala, who has defytyrants.com, and he talks, I've had him on many times to talk about the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. He's very concerned about what we're seeing here with the FACE Act and how a lot of these Christian influencers are reacting to it. He said the Freedom of Clinic Entrances Act, that's what FACE means, signed into law by Bill Clinton in 1994 rather, says, by the way, the group that he has is called Missionaries to the Preborn. He said, we were the first ones to violate the FACE Act anywhere in the nation, right here in Milwaukee, just 2 weeks after it was passed. A baby was spared a brutal death because of our interposition. The FACE Act outlaws banning entrance to abortion clinics to disrupt their services in any way. But the FACE Act also outlaws barring entrance to church entrances or disrupting their services in any way. But you notice that the title is about clinic entrance. It was all about abortion, and I didn't realize until I saw these Christians who are clamoring say, use the FACE Act against non-limit. It's like, what is that? I'd never seen the aspect that they had applied it to churches. And so he says, this reveals the religious nature of the FACE Act and also the sellout compromise. You let us go through with our abortion rights, and they spell that, I guess, R-I-T-E-S. You let us do that, and we'll let you have your religious rights in your churches. How about that? The FACE Act states plainly, this act prohibits the use or threat of force and physical obstruction that injures, intimidates, or interferes with a person seeking to obtain or provide reproductive health services. They're not trying to reproduce, they're trying to stop reproductive health. Or to exercise the First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship. Matt Trujillo says, in other words, if you Christians will agree not to interfere with our religion of reproductive rights, we will not interfere with your religion at your church buildings. You do not interfere with our services, and we won't interfere with your services. This is one of the great compromises of Christianity in the history of the church. He's absolutely right, as usual. The FACE Act revealed what was already known, that the American church had decided to live in peaceful coexistence with the murder of babies. The FACE Act wrote into statutory law the indifference to the preborn that the American church already possessed. The FACE Act revealed the religion of both sides. He's absolutely right about that. And so there's been a lot of angst about that, especially since now you've had a federal judge refuse to use these creative, there was not only the FACE Act, but there was another one saying they interfered with somebody's civil liberties and so forth by interfering with their religious service. And so since the judge shut that down, the conservatives are really clamoring about something to be done. He said, sadly, none of the lesser magistrates interposed against the FACE Act. He said, the book I authored, The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate, is now being translated, by the way, into Russian. That's great. He said, this past Sunday, I preached a sermon titled, The State of the Nation and the State of the Church 2026. He said he does this on the first Sunday of a new year from time to time. And this one, he talked about Palantir and Islam. And so you can find the link to that if you go to defytyrants.com, and I'd encourage you to take a look at that. So he said, on December the 4th, 2025, the Clark County Board in Virginia voted 5-0 in favor of a resolution declaring Clark County a Second Amendment sanctuary county. Good example of the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. They did so in the face of upcoming state legislation to infringe on the Second Amendment rights of those in Virginia, including the Clark County residents. County Supervisor Jason Matthias said the following prior to the vote. He said, the American nation was separated from England and established based on a very important underlying principle in Christian doctrine, the doctrine of lesser magistrates. The doctrine holds that when a higher civil authority enacts unjust or immoral laws, such as restrictive gun control measures that violate our God-given and constitutional rights, lower-ranking officials have both the right and the duty to refuse compliance or to actively resist. Rooted in historic Christian principles, the concept of interposition, this doctrine argues that such resistance is obligatory and serves to protect individuals from ungodly, unlawful government overreach. And I would say if we began to understand this, I played for you yesterday a group of Minnesota police chiefs were very upset about the way immigration law was being enforced by the federal government. And again, regardless of what you think about immigration law, you have to be concerned about the way this is being done. Just because you agree with the stated end goal, which I don't think they really want. If they want to get these people who came, the tens of thousands of Somalis who came as refugees, and stop that type of thing from happening in the future, why are they doubling the size of that program? Why is Trump doing that? Why is Mike Johnson and the Republicans doing that? Again, they don't want to, the end that they tell you they're pursuing is not what they're pursuing. But even if it were, the way they're doing this is wrong. It needs to be stopped. And you should have the local law enforcement people do this in a way where they could be the adults in the room and do this without having to have the citizens stand in the streets with guns. It'd be much better if the people who have the legitimate authority there were to stand up to all of this. So he says, the context of the gun control tyranny the Virginia Democrats seek to impose in the coming months, this doctrine is the linchpin to fight these state laws that infringe on the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Since all magistrates swear to uphold both constitutions, therefore county officials in Virginia who would do their duty to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, must invoke this doctrine not only to refuse enforcement that is seen as unconstitutional violation of the Second Amendment, but to actively resist it, even to the point of threatening the agents of tyranny with arrest and imprisonment. He said, "Gentlemen, we take our oaths primarily for times such as these, when the tide of evil is strong and the duty is difficult. This is not the time to avoid conflict or to settle for minor defeats. It is a time for meeting the tyrants head on and refusing to give an inch to their wicked machinations that would reduce us and our descendants to slaves." And I have to say, this is especially true when we look at what ICE is doing. You got Homeland Security and ICE officials at the very top putting out memos and training these new agents that they don't need to have warrants. They can go into any house that they want. Do you hear that? That's what they're doing. I don't care what your justification is. I don't care what your end goal is. You're not allowed to just throw the law out. But this is what we see from the Trump administration continually. I want to do this, I want to do that. People can have the arguments, for example, with tariffs. You can talk about, well, is this the right way to collect taxes, or would it be a better way to do it? They even want to argue that the tariffs are not taxes, which is patently absurd. But the reality is that you don't want one individual to be able to levy these things. And if you're going to create phony emergencies to do this, it just shows your contempt for the rule of law and your contempt for the truth when you lie to our faces. So Minnesota magistrate judge has rejected charges against Don Lemon over the anti-ICE church protest, and he's blocked charges for 2 other protesters. Again, it should be criminal trespass, but they're not going to do anything about it. And so the Christian commentators are furious about this, and they want to have a federal involvement in all of this. Well, let's talk a little bit about the abortion stuff while we're talking about the FACE Act. A poll shows that most Americans support limits to abortion. We're just before the 53rd annual March for Life. And as I said the other day, Abby Johnson, who used to manage one of the largest Planned Parenthood clinics in Houston, she had one, first of all, she said her moment of truth came when she was, as an administrator, she really wasn't involved in the actual abortions. But at one point in time, kind of like if you remember that animated thing called The Procedure, it was narrated by Kevin Sorbo, and it was based on an account that was given by a guy who was an ultrasound technician or whatever they call him. But he did ultrasounds, and he was called in to assist with an abortion. He had never done that before. He was horrified at what he saw. And he described the baby struggling, trying to get free of the forceps and how they're ripping the arms and legs off of the baby. Very disturbing. And even though they did it as a cartoon, they still had the narration of what he saw. Well, Abby Johnson got involved in that at one point in time. She had been an administrator, and she was just looking at it from a distance, not actually up close, and she saw an abortion. That changed everything for her. And prior to that, she nearly died from one of the abortions personally that she took. And so she's very hardcore in terms of opposing this stuff. She's very upset about the March for Life inviting J.D. Vance to speak, since the Trump administration made a big deal out of stopping money to Planned Parenthood back in March of last year. And then quietly, they were sued by the ACLU. They stopped, as it's been reported, $65 million of taxpayer money going to organizations that did abortion. The ACLU sued. So we have a right not only to kill people, but we have babies, but we have a right to get tens of millions of dollars to do it. And so they didn't say anything, but basically the HHS, the Trump administration's HHS, caved to all of this stuff. Now, RFK Jr. says, I didn't know anything about that. Trump says, I didn't know anything about it. Nobody knew anything about it, whatever happened, but they are responsible, whether they knew anything about it or not. If you're head of HHS, if you're head of the government, Trump is head of HHS as well, because it's underneath him. So they claim they didn't know anything about it. But that happened in the middle of December. Somebody noticed that the ACLU had, that the lawsuit from the ACLU had been dropped. And they started looking around and they said, wow, this Title X money has been restored. And there was an article, January the 15th, on The Hill. Abby Johnson has talked about it. The amazing thing is that 3 days after it was publicized, which is a month after the Trump administration restored taxpayer dollars to Planned Parenthood to kill babies, tens of millions of dollars. A month after that happened, people found out about it. They reported it. 3 days after that, J.D. Vance was invited by the March for Life people to speak and to take a victory lap for all the things the Trump administration has done to stop abortion. And also, as part of his speech, to talk about how men are men and women are women, and we're not going to allow this escape from reality. We're not going to allow the gaslighting of children and the mutilation of children, all the rest of the stuff. Guess what? That is also a big part of what Planned Parenthood does. They are branching out and have to that new developing business for quite some time now. So it's not just about killing babies. It's also about mutilating young children. And so this article from the Daily Signal quotes what the secretary, the deputy secretary of HHS said. So there's no human right to abortion. And he told the March for Life, he said, men are men, women are women, children are innocent and worth protecting. These efforts to deny these fundamental universal truths, sadly, we have seen such efforts succeed from time to time. And yet, look at what they are quietly, silently doing behind your back. He says the Trump administration is committed to promoting health and protecting life. No, they're committed to the lip service of that. Affirming human dignity means recognizing these children, including unborn children, are not experimental subjects, that their futures should not be shaped by pressure, ideology, or myopic medical decisions. And again, we're talking about the mutilations as well as the abortions. And now that money has been restored to Planned Parenthood by this same organization, Trump's HHS, for them to continue doing all of this. It's absolute hypocrisy and pretense. This is like the Greenland stuff. It's just amazing how, well, I mean, if you're going to believe that Trump is an anti-globalist, I guess you'll believe that he won in Greenland, and you're going to believe that they've actually shut down the funding to Planned Parenthood when they haven't. So again, he even goes on to say, abortion shocks the conscience and forces people to pay for abortion, forcing people to pay for it adds to the offense. HHS will continue to enforce the Hyde Amendment and protect American taxpayers from paying for elective abortions, while they have just consented to give tens of millions of dollars to Planned Parenthood. for abortions, for child mutilation and sterilization. It's amazing what hypocrites and liars they are. And then we go to Davos, and we go to Yuval Harari, who was making the usual rounds and talking about how he wants to, he sees that AI, he thinks, is actually going to become God. And so what he had to say at the World Economic Forum. Oh, it's not working. Okay. Well, we've lost that clip. Maybe you can find that. It's easy to criticize Harari, even to lampoon him. But the disturbing reality is that all the attendees of the World Economic Forum hang on his every word as if they're hearing from God himself. When he routinely turns wisdom into foolishness, if the Bible is just a collection of words, he says, well, then AI becomes our high priest. He says in that speech, if we could listen to it, but I'll tell you what he had to say. He said, if you think about it, it's just a bunch of words, right? The Bible, the Quran, all these different. So he said, AI can know more about the Bible or the Quran or this or that than you can. And if if AI knows about all these different religions, then AI essentially becomes God. You got the clip? Oh, okay. I saw the still there. I thought you were ready. Okay. So if you got it, just let me know. Anyway, as an atheist evolutionist, Harari views humanity as nothing more than meat machines and computers made out of flesh. Like most evolutionists, he believes we're ultimately stardust, something he shares with Alex Jones, who thinks that we're stardust as well. Amazing position. Anyway, he argues that what makes us unique is our mastery of words, our capacity for complex thought. Well, in a sense, he's right. That's part of what it means to be in the image of God, right? In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God and was God, and that was Christ. And the Greek for that is logos, which really implies not just spoken words and anything, but actually complex thought and intelligence. And that is part of what being in the image of God is really about. Another way to put it is that in the beginning, there was intelligence. We can see intelligent design in everything around us, everything inside of us. We see intelligent design. It's not artificial intelligence. It's supernatural intelligence. And yet, Harari pretends that that's not the case. He explained that since humanity's superpower has been language, again, it's part of being in the image of God, that AI's superior ability to arrange words and language tokens means that it will soon dominate anything constructive from language, including laws, books, especially religious-based texts, such as Islam, Christianity, Judaism, he said. AI could become the ultimate expert on holy books. Well, the problem is that he doesn't even see the intelligent design around him. How can you trust somebody like this to make conclusions about AI? He doesn't know how AI works. AI is just doing probabilistic, putting this stuff together. It's not thinking. And the fact that he thinks that AI is thinking, he thinks that because he wants to think that. He described incoming AI systems as millions of immigrants arriving without visas, loyal only to their creating corporations. He said these entities will take jobs, radically alter culture, religion, and romance, and trigger severe identity crises as humans lose their jobs and their supremacy in thinking. Well, that is, if we define ourselves by our jobs, yeah. If you define yourself by your job, if you define yourself by your bank account or your net worth or whatever, you're going to have a real identity crisis coming up in the next couple of years. Real identity crisis. It's going to be a trying time, I think, for all of us. But the reality is that that's how we grow. God puts us through difficult times, and that kind of difficulty can be a time of growth if it turns us to God. So who knows? We might actually have a renaissance based on these tough times, in the sense that we had a lot of people realize that they didn't want to have their kids in school finally because of Trump's lockdown. So it might be some kind of a reaction to that. You have a lot of people, especially the tech bros. There was an article about how the young guys working in Silicon Valley, they're not dating anybody. They're not looking to have any relationships with anyone. They want to spend their life alone. They're looking for their career. Any time that I spend out there dating or doing anything like that. It's time that I'm taking away from building my business. Like, really? You need to go back and... Did you miss all those productions of Christmas Carol when Ebenezer Scrooge kicks Nell to the curb so he can focus on his business? You think that's going to make you happy? No, it's not. And so maybe what we need to have is something's going to be a slap upside the face to wake us up as to what's going on. And AI might be that, as a matter of fact. But this person finishes with a quote from Romans talking about how people refuse to acknowledge what they can clearly see as God's design in the world. Although they claim to be wise, they became fools, and they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like mortal human beings, birds and animals and reptiles, maybe even robots, right? Therefore, God gave them over to the sinful desires of their hearts, to sexual impurity for the degrading of their bodies with one another. What he's talking about there, and this is an often quoted passage and other passages right before it, talking about how they turn to every kind of sexual depravity, including homosexuality, which is a big part of Yuval Harari's issue with God. He's a homosexual, and that's part of why he is an atheist, even though the evidence is right in front of him. Many of the best scientists in history became scientists because they wanted to see what God had done. They said, well, because it was created by intelligence and there's an organization and a structure to it, we can understand that. If you're coming from an evolutionary standpoint, why would you ever do science? It's just, this happened randomly. And it happened in a way that all of the laws, quote unquote, laws of nature were not in effect at that time. So why would I think that I could discover anything if there's no laws to nature, if there's no intelligence and design behind nature? So they exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and they worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. And that is what he thinks we're going to transcend. That is, when we talk about atheists and intelligent design, there is a new movie that has just come out, and the guy who did it is an atheist filmmaker. Let me see if I can find, this is one that's been in the deck for a while. It may have disappeared as well. It's a trailer. Yes.
The hard drive disconnected, so I'm working on getting the clips reconnected. I'll get that reconnected right away. So just
okay. So you don't have the trailer for this either?
I'll get it.
Okay. All right. Well, let me know when you got it. Bottom line is, this is director Michael Ray Lewis. He is a former atheist, but he became a believer. He directed a new documentary called The Universe Designed. He talked about how his past atheism was driven by the fact that many Christians couldn't answer his questions. He said, well, it looks like evolution has disproven Christianity. And if there's an all-loving God, then why would there be evil in the world? Why would there be death and suffering? If you got questions like that, I would recommend that you go to Answers in Genesis, because the answers are right there in Genesis. And they can help to show you those answers. There's evil in the world because of sin. There's death in the world because of sin. And you can't reconcile evolution with the Bible, because the world was created good. Evolution is depends on death and evil as a creative force. They see it as a good thing. Instead, it is a consequence of disobedience. So he said, I would have objections like, I can't believe that in a God that would send me to eternal punishment just because I have trouble believing him. With people around him unable or unwilling to answer these objections and questions, he said he gravitated towards atheism and based his entire worldview on it. He said, I'd watch documentaries by people like Bill Maher, and I remember I watched a documentary called Zeitgeist, and both of those documentaries were showing how Christianity wasn't true, that Jesus was just a myth that was copied by all those other ancient myths. Well, if you have questions like that, they have very effective documentaries as well as books and other things at Answers in Genesis, and I'd definitely recommend that to you. Anyway, he says, but eventually something changed. And he said, it wasn't until I took a second look at Christianity and dug deeper than just the surface level questions that I started to discover that there were answers, not only to those questions that I was asking, but there were powerful arguments for the existence of God. After he married his wife, a woman who had grown up in church but had drifted away, something surprising happened. She approached him one day, and she said she felt Jesus was calling her back. I remember thinking to myself, oh no, I don't want to deal with this. But you know what? I love her. So I'll go to church and I'll see what all this is about, he said. I figured all I have to do to stop going to church is just to show her that it's not true. Interesting, because that is we've seen a lot of Christian apologists who did exactly that. Lee Strobel, for example, who wrote The Case for Christ and he's got a whole series of books called The Case for This and That. And J. Warner Wallace, who I've talked to several times, who has Cold Case Christianity. Both of them went to church. They didn't believe any of it. They went because their wife went, and they were going to disprove it to their wife. Instead, what they wound up doing was proving it to themselves and making that their life's work. He says, that's where I really started to discover the evidence. She ended up buying me a Bible. I remember I read through a few pages of Genesis, and I just pushed it away and said, this is nonsense. But it was actually one particular video of an astrophysicist that popped up on my YouTube feed. He was showing that science is not incompatible with Christianity. In fact, science actually shows that there's evidence of there being an intelligent creator. I remember that was the first moment where it kind of piqued my curiosity. Over time, he began examining the evidence more fervently, reading books, consulting resources to go deeper into these connections. Eventually, he came around to believe. And look, that's the part of Pascal's wager that I think you should pay attention to. The way, don't approach it from the standpoint like Scott Adams said. Well, hey, I'll say these magic words, and then if it's true, then I win and you win and we're all happy, right? I'll wake up in heaven. No, instead, look at this and say, I've got these questions. I'm going to put this to the test. And if you do that, if you honestly do that and you dig deep, you're going to find the answers. We don't have to be concerned about digging deep. If you got any questions about things, there's people who can help you. And you can find the answers yourself. It looks like we got the trailer working. Let me play that for you.
Any person who is truly a thinking person needs to ask themselves the question, why is there something rather than nothing?
Scientists believe there's an intelligible answer to that, meaning there is a reason for the way things are. What's that reason?
Why do I exist? Why do you exist? Why does the universe...
We got Gerald.
Physicists have discovered fundamental constants and parameters and characteristics that define the universe. Have to assume exacting, precise values.
If you were to change any one of them, there would either be no universe or no universe that could support life.
Our galaxy, our star, our planetary system, the Earth, the Moon, whatever size scale you choose to look at, you see an overwhelming experimental and observational case that there is a being out there fine-tuning, intervening.
Immersing myself in the study of biochemical systems, I became deeply impressed with the ingenuity and the elegance and the sophistication of those systems.
The living cell is chock full of miniature machines that doesn't just rival, but it vastly exceeds our own high-tech digital technology.
There must be a creator that's behind life itself.
If some kind of a God existed, he would want to reveal himself, at least in some way. We would have to look at all of the different ways people have understood him to do that.
I want to know, is there any evidence backing any one of them up as uniquely being true?
This guy shows up on the scene and does something remarkable. Whatever it is he did, split history.
He's on the pages of the Quran, on the pages of Baha'u'llah's sacred writings, on the pages of Buddhism, Hinduism, Krishna, New Age.
These Romans were skilled in crucifixion. They knew how to make sure that someone was completely dead.
Many of Jesus' disciples had experiences that Jesus had risen from the dead.
What did they gain? Well, they were beaten, tortured, persecuted, beheaded, stoned, whipped, and running for their lives.
We really have to put our beliefs to the fire.
The reason we believe God is true is because he's the best explanation for the way things are.
There are truths that can be known, and I want to know what they are.
And again, the film is Universe Designed. He'd been working on horror films, but he said, as he's investigating this, he says, I realized that my reasoning for not believing in God wasn't based on evidence anymore. He said it was based on the fact that I didn't want it to be true. In other words, Romans 1, which is where Yuval Harari is. He doesn't want it to be true. And so he knows that it's true. He can't help but see it. Day after day, everything around us declares that it's made by God. And so he just turned his back on all of that. So it just happened by chance. But he says, I realized that I didn't want it to be true. And then I thought to myself, well, that's not a good reason. And so he continued to investigate. And again, he became a Christian. He said he'd been working on horror films in the film industry. He said, I wanted to do something for Christ. He said, I knew I wanted to present a case for the existence of God, but I wasn't sure how I was going to structure it. So I just started collecting as much content as I could. I ended up with 36 hours of interview content that I had to condense down into an hour and 25-minute film. I had to make it have sense and to tell a story, but not to be too much information heavy nor to lose people. So I hope that's what I've done, he said. And so, again, there is some great information out there. It is the most important thing that you can find. And as we look at AI, we have Chris Pratt talking about AI. He said he just did a film, and he was interviewed about that. They asked him a question about AI because AI is central to the new film that he did, which was called Mercy. And we don't have that clip. But what he said in the film, he plays a detective who's accused of murdering his wife. He's got 90 minutes to defend himself to an AI judge, he said. If he fails, he'll be put to death. So I said, so what do you think about AI outside of this film? He said, well, in a sense, in this film, it's almost like it's playing God, just like Yuval Harari. He wants it to be our master. Isn't that interesting how Yuval Harari rejects God, rejects the evidence of intelligent design all around him, and then projects godlike intelligence onto this computer program and wants to subordinate himself and us to that. Isn't that strange? It's just the strangest thing. Anyway, Chris Pratt says AI is man-made, so it can't be God. It's inherently flawed. It will always be flawed because it's made by the brokenness of man. So it'll always be limited in the way that we are limited. It is not God. It will not replace God. As a matter of fact, if Yuval Harari knew anything about AI, he would understand that it's the big data that these people are always so eager to grab. That's why they want to scrape all this stuff off of social media places and so forth. And they need to have human data. One of the big limitations of AI in the future would be if there's a lot of AI information that gets put out, synthetic in other words, instead of human. If that becomes the dominant factor, then basically it gets kind of like Yakhov's Creutzfeldt disease or what, mad cow disease, right? We start sort of thing that cannibals, or you feed cows, other cows, they become, it gives them a brain disease. Well, the same thing happens with artificial intelligence. If you fill up all the internet, which is what it's feeding on, AI has to feed on our intelligence. So, of course, it can't be over us, really. It's going to be a limiting factor, as well as the power. I mean, if things get really bad, we just take out the power stations and we go back and live like the Amish. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to get Gerald Slinty on it.
We heard about it on the radio. We didn't believe it. And Neil and I were out driving around in one of his woodies, and we went over to this friend's house. And a friend came back from the store with a magazine with a girl kneeling over the dead kid. And I watched it hit Neil. He opened the magazine and looked at this thing and hit him in the heart. And I watched him ride Ohio, right there. And I remember calling Nash and saying, hey, get a studio right now. We need a studio right now.
Crosby telling me that he saw Neil's face. He saw Neil go off into the woods. Neil came back an hour later and played in Ohio. Crosby called me and Stephen, who we were in Los Angeles at the time, He said, Neil has written this song, you're not going to believe it. We've got to get in the studio right away. Stephen and I booked the record plant here in Hollywood. Neil and David came down. We went into the studio. We cut Ohio.
We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming. For dead in Ohio.
We cut the B-side, Find the Cost of Freedom. Ahmet Erdogan, who was the president of Atlantic at that time, was at the session. We gave him the master. He took it back to New York. That single was out on the street in 10 days. We killed our own single of Teach Your Children, which was my song. And we didn't care. We didn't care about any of those rules. We didn't care about the record company saying, listen, you don't want to do this. Let Teach Your Children get up there, do its thing, and then, a couple of months later, bring it out. What we wanted to do was bring it out instantly now. We were angry now. The kids were angry now. We wanted to speak and scream about this now. We wanted to put that record out on top of our other record, and we killed it stone dead, and we didn't care.
Cover was a picture of the Constitution with 4 bullet holes in it. And we got it out right away.
Gotta get down to it. Soldiers are cutting us down. Should have been done long ago. What if you knew her and found her dead on the ground? How could you run when you know?
And I'm screaming for and why at the end. I'm damn near in tears.
All right, and welcome back. And joining us now is Gerald Celente. And as I showed you at the beginning of the show, the cover for Trends Journal is Kent State 2.0. He's got a picture there of Nixon as well as Trump. And I think what's going on right now is even worse than Kent State. There is no remorse. There's no regret. And it's going house to house. They said we can go to anybody's house, kick the door in for anybody. This has been going on for quite some time. Now they no longer are ashamed of it, right? This is a bold-faced murder that's out there. I see a comment here from Gard Goldsmith of Liberty Conspiracy. He said, I just saw this from Trump. He said, this is what Trump said on his Ministry of Truth social. He says, we take out 25 murderers, drug dealers. We take out the whole group of people by the thousands. And if we get one person a little bit wrong, headlines. Yeah, one person a little bit wrong. Like taking his gun out and shooting him in the back 10 times. One person a little bit wrong. Thank you for joining us, Gerald. And of course, GeraldTrendsJournal.com. And if you use the code NIGHT, you can get a significant discount off of Trends Journal. And it is one of the best sources of information out there. It's not just Kent State 2.0. He had the one prior to that, I Gold You So. I like that one a lot. Yeah, you've been telling us, Gerald, for a long time about gold and silver. And, of course, last year and continuing on this year already, in January, we've had a huge run-up in the price of gold and silver as well. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, and thanks for all you do. I have to tell you, I'm heartbroken.
Yeah.
To see what's going on with this, what Trump is doing. I guess he went back to that German heritage of probably like that Hitler spirit in him,
Yeah.
And then, by the way, he says one thing and does another thing. And as we made it 1,000% clear when he ran for president, we want to have peace on earth all over. That was in September of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. That was in October 2024. I want immediate peace. That was last January.
Mm-hmm.
I'm moving quickly to end wars, settle conflicts, to restore the planet to peace. I want peace. How many times did he bomb Somalia? About 130 times.
Yeah.
He bombed Yemen. Oh, he bombed Iraq. He bombed Iran. And will he bomb them again? Oh, I forgot he kidnapped the president and his wife in Venezuela. And what else? Killing people on those boats. Them are drugs dealers. We don't need any proof.
Well, Gerald, Gerald, he is a man of peace. I mean, he just created the Board of Peace, and he just had the Nobel Peace Prize given to him by a woman on her knees. It just, it's so phony. It's amazing. Yeah.
You mean the Nobel Peace of Crap Prize?
Yeah.
Same one that they gave to Obama, who's quoted in the book Double Down, I'm really good at killing people.
Yeah.
Oh, the Obama, I want that guy Gaddafi out of there. Oh, no, you have to say it properly, Serenity. We must bring freedom and peace to Libya, the richest country in Africa, because we want to steal their oil. Oh, I forgot. They want that guy Assad out of there. Oh, the Obama, that little slime ball of nothing that's probably worth, what, about 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 million dollars now that lives in mansions that had no dough before?
Yeah.
Oh, how about the, as soon as he gets into office, after lying his way in, Afghan troop surge? Oh, you forgot that one, everybody? Oh, I love Obama. Yeah, it's a Nobel Peace of Crap Prize.
Yeah.
And again, going back to Trump, he says one thing and does another thing. So the ICE aren't only killing people, the ICE kill the bull. It's no longer bull. It's Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Trump out bull.
This guy that he's got, Bovino, I was saying that, is the way you pronounce that is actually bovine, because they needed somebody who's full of BS, to be in that position. But they put him out to pasture now. But, it's interesting, Gerald, and you cover it in Trends Journal, the fact that they have just said, we're going to go house to house, and we got the authority to do that. We don't need warrants anymore.
Yeah.
Badges, I don't need no stinking badges. And if you try to take my picture, you are interfering with my enforcement. And I'm going to assault you, maybe kill you for taking my picture. And it's kind of interesting because ICE agents are going to be used for security in the Winter Olympics in Italy.
I know.
And the people in Italy are not happy about this, obviously, because they've been watching what's going on in the U.S. They even had a couple of reporters who were beat up and threatened, assaulted by ICE agents as they were doing a report for Italian TV. And so they know exactly what these guys are about. And you got to ask yourself, why in the world would they go with ICE? Why would they have ICE providing security for American officials in the Olympics, the Winter Olympics in Italy, in a foreign country? Well, clearly it's not about immigration enforcement, right? These people have become a Praetorian Guard, haven't they? I mean, they've already got Secret Service. They don't need to have immigration enforcement in a foreign country. So what are they about? Is this like their own secret Gestapo police?
It's right in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
Look at that woman that it's on the New York Times today. This woman with about 10 guys out there going into her house without a warrant, by the way.
That's right. That's right.
To arrest her husband, who's from Libya.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys are all armed with all this stuff. I mean, this is Nazi Germany.
It is. It is. Yeah, they're
It's right in
armed
front of
and armored.
everybody's eyes.
That's right. Well, they pulled out that guy, his elderly guy, it was before the killing of Alex Preddy. They went to his house, and he had immigrated here. He was Hmong. He was from Laos. Came here 30, 35 years ago. He's never had any issues with anything illegal. And he's a naturalized American citizen. He went through did everything legally and was law-abiding. They kicked the door down on his house, and they had a full-on SWAT team raid. They drag him out in 10-degree weather wearing his underwear and Crocs. That's it. He grabbed a blanket from his grandson, and they disappeared him for a couple of hours while they checked out his ID and then just brought him back and dropped him off like nothing had ever happened. It's absolutely amazing. And then they put a cover story out 2 hours after that, said we were looking for some real criminals that had been indicted for rape and all this other kind of stuff. And they put the pictures up. These are guys that were in their 20s. And, this guy's like in his 60s. There's no way that they could confuse them with him. They're just doing whatever they want. And they've been given absolute immunity by the federal government. J.D. Vance talked about that. It's absolutely true. There are things that you can do if you have state or local police abuse their authority. You can sue them. But they don't allow that for the feds. There is no recourse for feds.
No. Again, this country, this is heartbreaking. I cry when I see this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
cry when I see it, and the lies in front of everybody's eyes. That gnome, she labeled Preddy, quote, a domestic terrorist.
Yeah, right. Well,
Right?
she said in that first shooting of Renee Good, she said they were stuck in the snow. What was that? Okay, we're having some computer issues here. I'm sorry. She said they were stuck in the snow and they were attacked. Nothing at all. And Trump says the guy was run over and had to be taken to the hospital. He wasn't even knocked down. They just lied directly to you. They don't even
Right in front of your eyes.
They don't even bother to even look.
Again, I want to make this clear. ICE kill the bull. It's no longer bull. It's Trump.
Yeah.
Trump out bull. One here, that little Nomi, right?
Mm-hmm.
She said when the ICE agent who fatally shot Good shot her as an appropriate response, you ready? To an act of domestic terrorism.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
She accused that woman who was trying to drive away as an act of domestic terrorism. She's unarmed, right?
Yeah.
And the video evidence shows she was trying to steer away from the agent who shot her 3 times.
Yeah.
And then a video posted yesterday, oh, excuse me, on Tuesday, yesterday. They got this ICE guy in a car, and he looks at this guy. He said, quote, I'll tell you this, brother. You raise your voice, I erase your voice.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
You see
absolutely.
that?
Yep.
All right.
And he repeated that to him, and he said, wait, did you just say? He repeated it. And he goes, yeah, I said it, and he said it again. The cop did. This is kind of arrogance, and they've gone to war with the American people. They say, well, civilians this and civilians that. If you start calling citizens civilians, what you're saying is that you're a military, that we're under martial law. And that's the way these people see it.
You said something just now. They've gone to war against the American people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And why should we be surprised about that? Because I said that back in 2020. I said, what Trump has done with the lockdown is essentially an economic sanction. And sanctions are a declaration of war. He declared war on the American people in 2020. And you got people who are fighting to keep him in, making excuses for everything that he does. And they reelected him. And now they're still making excuses for his wars abroad and his wars and terror here at home. The terrorists are the people like Kristi Noem.
Again, this is very important. I was against, as you well know, the genocide Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Support. And that little clown boy of little nothing arrogant scum, Anthony Blinken. My daddy was the ambassador. My uncle was the ambassador to Belgium. A little arrogant. I come to Israel as a Jew. When they think, how about you came to Israel as an American? And so, what religion do I care what you believe in?
Exactly, yeah.
Right? All right. But anyway, I came out against Genocide Joe. I would get these emails. Like from that little guy, Greg Kunter. You remember him? Yeah, he hates me because I came out against, I didn't like. But now I get hate mail because I'm against what Trump is doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I get hate mail.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
and there are things I support what Trump is doing. Yeah, I don't want to be in NATO, but let's get out. I agree. Oh yeah, don't let these corporations buy all the homes that people are losing. I agree with that. Oh, but I'm not allowed to disagree.
That's right.
Anybody that puts their mind in a little circle. I'm a Republican. I'm a Democrat. I'm a liberal. I'm a conservative. My mind is the size of a pea.
Yeah,
all right.
That's right.
And
put themselves in the box.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Greenland. That's a good example, right?
I
or
forgot
NATO,
about
right?
Greenland.
Take
about
NATO.
Canada.
Yeah, let's get out of NATO. One way you can get out of NATO is to invade Greenland, but let's not invade Greenland. So it matters. We can agree that we want to get out of NATO, but we can disagree about the fact that you want to do it by starting a war with Denmark or something like that. It's absurd. The methods, the means that he's using are absolutely absurd, even if we agree with the end goal that could happen.
Yeah. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
This just came out from Reuters. Reuters, mainstream. In 6 violent encounters, evidence contradicts Trump's immigration official narratives.
Yeah. That's right.
U.S. President Donald Trump's immigration officials, official pieces of crap, have repeatedly made statements after violent encounters involving federal agents, including 2 fatal shootings of U.S. citizens, blah, 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 that were later contradicted by evidence a Reuters review found. Trump officials quickly painted the 2 recently shot dead, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, as aggressors and said the shootings were justified. But video and other evidence soon emerged that contrasted sharply with these accounts, fueling questions about the credibility of federal officials, official pieces of crap, and doubts about their willingness to fully investigate these and other incidents.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, what I see so disturbing is the kind of people that you're talking about that had the brain the size of a pea, that their whole identity is tied up in what tribe they want to belong to. And these are the people who are really dangerous, because these are going to be the people on the street that are going to be attacking us because, we have a disagreement with their tribe about something. So therefore, we're with the other guys, right? You're either with us or you're a terrorist type of thing. Yeah. And, I saw this one clip of some guy who was an anchor or a news person or something. He's sitting at a desk commenting for Newsmax. And he pulls up a cell phone. He goes, look, I can hold it to make it look like a gun. And that's what's justified with all these killings.
Are you kidding me?
He did that, Gerald. He did that. I couldn't believe it.
What a little piece of slime.
They will stoop to anything.
Little piece of crap.
They will stoop to anything to excuse Trump.
It's not Newsmax. It's news crap.
Yeah, it is. It is.
How about go to Fox, all right? Fox. How about Kitten? What Fox?
Yeah. So when you look at what these people are saying as well, this is coming from Tricia McLaughlin, who's under Kristi Noem, and she was one of the people out there calling them terrorists and other things. She said, make no mistake, threatening rhetoric and this unprecedented violence against our law enforcement is incited and repeated vilification, demonization of law enforcement, comparing ICE day in and day out to Nazi Gestapo, secret police, and slave patrols has consequences. She's not the only one to say that. You had this Greg Bovine was saying that as well. And when I retweeted that and I said, well, I call you Gestapo and slave overseers all the time. I'll make sure that I do it more frequently now. And I said that the consequences are going to be if we don't call out this kind of behavior. But what she's saying here is, shut up. Your speech is violence. Where have we heard that before? That was the war cry of all the censors on the left for the longest time. And now the parting on the left is now parting on the right, just like the Who said. We got to not get fooled again. These people are no different from each other. They're all out there saying, shut up, I'm going to censor you. If you criticize me, you're anti-Semitic, you're hateful, your speech is violence, and I'm going to shut it down, and there's going to be consequences for you saying what you want to say. So let's just get free speech off the table. And let's get the Second Amendment off while we're at it, and we can throw out the 10th Amendment because we're going to have all law enforcement subsumed under a kind of militarized, federalized police state.
Now, what woman did you quote that said that?
That was Tricia McLaughlin, Assistant Secretary. She's Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security.
Homeland Security. Oh, you mean Homeland Security brought to us by that little guy with a pair of cojones smaller than a mothball, if he has any, little Georgie Bush?
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
That Homeland Security?
Yeah.
That we never had before?
Yeah.
That cost us how many billions and billions of dollars to do?
Yeah, let's consolidate all the federal law enforcement that doesn't have any authority to exist in the first place. You got all these agencies like the FBI that we never had before we had this master bureaucrat, J. Edgar Hoover. And so you've got all these federal law enforcement agencies for which there really is no authority. And so let's put all them together and centralize them and call it Homeland Security. They just keep centralizing and consolidating everything and doing it in Washington, and it keeps getting more and more corrupt, more and more dangerous.
Yeah. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
This is from Reuters. Trump says Alex Preddy should not have carried gun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Did you see this?
Well, he's a Democrat gun control guy. He really is.
Yeah, right. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
He goes, asked whether he agreed with administration officials who described Preddy as a domestic terrorist, Trump said, I haven't heard that. He heard that. They
Yeah,
put
he
it
heard
out. They
it. Yeah.
called it, right?
Over and
Because-
over again. Yeah.
Yep. Trump, speaking to reporters at an Iowa restaurant, later added, quote, he had a gun. I don't like that. He had 2 fully loaded magazines. That's a lot of bad stuff.
I wonder how many magazines his bodyguards carry with their guns.
Again, and the facts show the guy never pulled out the gun.
That's right.
They took the gun away from him.
And they took the gun out of the back of his waistband, right in front of the guy who pulled his gun out and started shooting in his back. That guy knew as well that the gun was gone. It's amazing.
This, I'm telling you, hey, all right, you know one of my lines. When all else fails, they take you to war.
Yeah, that's right. Domestically now, I guess. Yeah.
Well, now they're going to take us to war against Iran.
Mm-hmm.
They're ramping that up. It'll get the people's mind off it. Again, yeah, I've done this, and I don't want to keep going over it. I read the thing from History Today when Franklin Roosevelt seizes all Japanese assets during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And the British and the Dutch, and they cut off 3/4 of Japanese trade, 88% of their oil, and stole their money. And that's during the Great Depression. Go back to George E. Bush. The dot-com bust happened in March of 2000, where the NASDAQ lost 80% of its value. America's in a recession. They hated little George E. Bush. All of a sudden, 9/11 happens. Everybody forgot about it. You look at the numbers. The people are disgusted about what's going on now. They're going to get the people's mind off this.
Yeah.
They're not going to bomb Iran during the week. They're going to do it on a weekend like he did it before, like he kidnapped the Venezuelan president and his wife on a weekend when the equity markets are closed.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I've been at this for 46 years. I've been bullish on gold for how long? Magazine covers one after another saying gold prices would go up. What it hit $5,300 and it backed off a little bit. $5,300.
I didn't realize it got that high. I was surprised when I looked on Friday and it was 4,800. Then on Monday, I'd say 5,100. I didn't know it had gone to 5,300. That's amazing.
It backed off from that,
wow.
But it hit it.
Wow.
All right. Now it's going up because of the geopolitical and socioeconomic instability like we've never seen in our lifetime.
Yeah. Being generated up by Donald Trump, actually. All this geopolitical stuff and everything is really ego political, isn't it?
And then again, by the way, the Trends journals, when you put in the night link, it costs $2.50 a week, pennies a day. And we're giving people, they're not getting anywhere else and nowhere. And by the way, you could also, we're selling more products. And again, as you know, this is one of the shirts.
There you go. Yeah, you got that's Trump's hand sign there, right?
And it's not only Trump, it's going on in a country near you. All right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, you got that little Gatson Macron? Oh, we got to build up our military. Oh, yeah. Oh, that little Starmer boy, we got to build up our military. Hire Mertz. Oh, borrowing $1 trillion as you're in 2 years of recession. Yeah, but our economy grew 0.2%. We're borrowing $1 trillion. We have to kill more Russians. We only killed 27 million of them in World War II. All right? This is going on around the world. When all else fails, they take you to war. The global economy is failing in front of everybody's eyes. Oh, the dollar, was it at a 4-year low?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And again, we're waiting to see what the feds are going to say today. The feds are going to lower interest rates. They may not do it today. They'll do it next month, the month after. They're going to do everything they can to prop up the global economy, the American economy. The numbers are BS. Oh, did you see it just came out yesterday. Let me see if I can find it here. It's in the Trends Journal. In our economic update. Let me see if I could find it here. Anyway, it's about the Americans. Yeah, this is Today, gold prices spiked. This is yesterday. $173, selling at $5,180. Now, again, it hit 5,300, backed off. And silver went up $8, selling at $112.09 an ounce. This is yesterday. Last week, gold was selling at $4,758 an ounce, and silver $94.35 an ounce.
Wow. Wow.
So, again,
and I don't think this is a market mania either, because this has been building for a very long time. And all the things that were getting people to buy into gold and silver, maybe this rapid rise is because I started seeing finally CBS and Wall Street Journal, people like that, starting to talk about the rapid rise of gold. I hadn't seen that in mainstream media, but that's going to drive some consumer purchases that are there. But that's the only thing that would be reactionary to any of this stuff. When we see Trump take over the Federal Reserve, I think it's really going to hit the ceiling.
Well, by the way, I agree, by the way, we should not have a Federal Reserve to begin with. The scum piece of crap, Woodrow Wilson, gave us the Federal Reserve, World War I, federal income tax, and the IRS.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's the banks, the bandits. Oh, who was the, going back to genocide, Joe, who was the Treasury Secretary? Ms. Fatshar Brut, Janet Yellen? Oh, yeah. What was her former role? She was the Fed head. All right?
Yeah.
So going back to this, very important in your Trends Journal. What's going on? We say there's no relationship between Wall Street and Main Street. In fact, an Oxfam report that came out, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Billionaires own more than half of the world's largest media companies and nearly all of the main social media companies.
Yes, that's right.
That's why we're giving the people that they're not getting anywhere else. You talked about Newsmax. All right. Who funds them? I think it's an Israeli group, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't.
That's what I've heard.
I don't watch them at all. I just saw that picture and it's like,
saying I don't watch them.
unbelievable.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
What did that guy Ellison just bought?
Larry Ellison.
CBS.
Yeah.
And who did he bring in? Barry Weiss, a pro-Zionist. He's pro-Zionist. His son's pro-Zionist.
Yes.
And you call it news?
That's right.
Okay, you ready? The super rich are using their wealth to buy politicians, influence governments, own newspapers and social media platforms, and outlawyer any opposition to ensure impunity from justice. That's the quote from Oxfam.
And of course, this has always been that way, except it's never been to this extent. And it's never been right in our faces. They would try to keep it behind closed doors, right? Now they're openly doing this in the same way that ICE is openly doing what it's doing. The corruption, the brutality, the police state is all in your face in so many different ways.
So they go on to say that in the U.S., for example, more proof, just 100 billionaire families poured a record-breaking $2.6 billion into the 2024 U.S. federal elections. America, you got no money, you can't run for anything, all right?
That's right.
End of story. But here we go. This is the point I wanted to make. Yet again, the conference board reported that U.S. consumer confidence hit an 11.5-year low.
Yeah.
Yep. 11.5-year low. And going back to the dollar, as we used to say in the Bronx, BS has its own sound, right? The dollar sunk to a 4-year low. And you know what President Trump said yesterday? The dollar value is, quote, great.
Yeah. He's going to lie to you about everything.
Again, get rid of the word bullshit. It's Trump shit.
Yeah.
Get rid of the word bullshit.
Yep.
It's right in front of your eyes. Oh, that's bullshit. No, it's not. It's Trump shit. Trump shit outshits bullshit. And again, we go on to say, you go to my podcast on Daniela Camboni, ITM, on and on and on. I've been saying all of last year that gold could hit $5,000 an ounce by the end of 2025. I was a couple of days off.
Yeah, that's right.
But you know what the mainstream media is? Here we go. In late December, J.P. Morgan wrote that, quote, prices are expected to push toward $5,000 an ounce. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
By the fourth quarter of 2026.
Oh, I know. I've been looking at this stuff. They've been very, very conservative with all this stuff. And by the time they write their article, it's already past that point.
2026. Hey, Godson, you're 11 months late.
Yeah, that's
No,
right.
Salenti, shut the hell up. We're J.P. Morgan Chase. You're just a little wop from the Bronx.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, you know, it's interesting. I looked at this one article from Zero Hedge. They had a guy saying, well, the bullish case for 2026 and the bearish case for 2026. On the bullish side, and it's total BS is what it is, he says, well, you know, we have Trump doing various things like lowering interest rates and talking about stimulus checks and tax cuts and all the rest of this kind of stuff. So that could really make things work. And it's like, no, that's how we got here. You know, I looked to see, because we added $2 trillion to the collective debt last year under Trump. So I thought, well, at the rate that they're adding it right now, how long does it take us to get to $40 trillion? Because that's going to be, you know, one of these things like, you know, when you pass, when you pass a $3,000 gold or $4,000 gold or $5,000 gold, that's a kind of a psychological thing, right? People really start to pay attention. They're going to pay attention when we hit $40 trillion, I think. There's going to be some articles about it, but yeah, most people are just going to kick it down the road. But still, how long is it going to take us to get to $40 trillion? We'll be there by September at the current rate, except that they're going even faster. They've got even more spending programs that they want to add to what we're doing. So it'll be sooner than September, because they're certainly not going to slow down. If anything, they'll add a lot more programs, more defense spending and all the rest of the stuff. They'll get there even faster.
David, it's way over $38 trillion. When you put in Social Security and all the other debt,
that's right.
we're talking over $100 trillion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, it's costing $8 billion a day to service the debt.
Yeah.
So he's going to lower interest rates so they pay less. And again, the lower interest rates fall, the deeper the dollar falls. The deeper the dollar falls, the higher gold prices go up.
Mm-hmm.
And again, what Trump did at Davos, he alienated NATO.
Mm-hmm.
He alienated European countries. What did they just do a couple of days ago? Oh, they made a deal with India?
Yeah.
Oh, that little canary, carny, clown. The other guy came from the Banks, the Bandits. That's the jerk up there in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what did he do? He's making a deal with China.
Yeah, that's right.
They're going to be pulling away from the United States. They had enough of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be the death of the dollar. And everybody, the dot-com bust is going to bring this thing down even worse.
Yeah.
So
and of course, you also had these South American countries do a deal with Europe. They've been, you know, circling around each other, trying to do a deal for the longest time. Now they've done a deal. And look at what we did for Argentina. That's the things that we get, right? You know, he does this. He throws the American farmers under the bus by going to war with their biggest buyer, you know, China. And then he gives relief to Argentina. And Argentina turns around and says, well, we'll sell you the soybeans. And now they've made the deal with Europe as well. And he still hasn't done anything for the farmers.
Again, when you talk about these jerks that talk about tax cuts, they enrich the rich.
Yeah, that's right.
Again, we only go by the data. When he did it in 2017, according to the Tax Policy Center, the top 1% got 64% of the tax cut benefits. And Trump sold the BS. Hey, they're going to use this money for capital improvements. They're going to create jobs. No. What they did with the dough was 2018 was the biggest year of stock buybacks.
That's right.
That's what they did with the money.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I remember you talking about that. We came on the program on a regular basis back then, and we were talking about that all the time. And you look at what happened.
Let me cut you off before we forget.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about the pro-MAGA people?
Mm-hmm.
How about your buddy Alex Jones, huh?
Yeah. It's amazing. He's cheering the police state out there that he did 4 documentaries against the police state. Now he put up a thing, I talked about it this week, 100% proof that the shooting was justified of Alex Preddy. And it's like, no, not at all. As a matter of fact, Robert Barnes just put a single comment. He said, The gun was already off of him by the time they shot him in the
Again.
back on the ground. It's just that simple.
That's the MAGA head.
Yeah.
That's the brain dead. Oh, he took me off the air too. You know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Never told me why. I know why. Because I won't suck up to Trump. I wonder who paid him off. I wonder how much money maybe he got from Musk or somebody.
Yeah. Well, you know, with all that trial thing, it really didn't get much attention, but he got $9 million in crypto and Bitcoin in just one transaction. I thought, what in the world is going on with this? He was on the stand. They said, we just got $8 million. He goes, oh, no, actually, it was $9 million that I got. It's like, who'd you get that from? Nobody ever asked. Where's he getting that kind of money from?
And that's the difference between you and I and the Trends Journal.
Yeah.
We put the facts down.
Yeah. That's right.
We only put facts, and then we give our analysis and our forecast. These are the facts, which nobody. Again, the media is gone. It's dead. And again, Oxfam makes it 1,000,000% clear what they put out there. And I want to thank you for everything that you're doing, because there's hardly any of us left. Judge Napolitano has a great article that just came out, again going after what Trump did with ICE, and there are very few out there that are doing this.
Oh, it infuriates me. When I saw this stuff over the weekend, it bothered me so much. I mean, I've hardly done anything other than talk about that this week because it is so fundamental. How are we going to live in a country like this where the police can do whatever they wish? I mean, we've been going down this path for a long time with the drug war and now with the immigration war. And you look at this, the CIA is doing all the drug running. They're the biggest drug runners out there. So I said, whenever the government creates a problem and then offers you as a solution an authoritarian society, maybe you ought to suspect something that's going on here. And that's exactly what we're seeing here with all this stuff.
Here, this is an article in this week's Trends Journal by Judge Andrew Napolitano. You ready for the headline?
Yeah.
American Gestapo, American Psycho.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Right?
Absolutely.
And he ends it by saying, the shameless lying is contradicted by what we all can see. The same psychotic mentality that argued last year it can execute people on the high seas without trial.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Has brought that might makes it right nihilism into our streets.
And you even heard Stephen Miller say that. I mean, he even said, you have to be able to hang on. If you want to have a country, you better have the military strength to fight everybody else off. That's the kind of world that he wants. There's a great meme that I've been putting up with this guy, Stephen Miller. They call him Pee Wee German. They put him in a Nazi uniform. That describes him better than anything I've seen. Pee Wee German. That's exactly his idea. Yeah.
He goes on to write, of course, psychopaths have the upper hand. Watch out, people of Iran. When the psychopaths are failing at home, they will bring us to war abroad. As you know, and it's what I've been saying. When all else fails, they take you to war.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, foreign and domestic, I think, is what's happening here. You know, I read that quote about, watch your rhetoric and don't say this or there's going to be consequences. And so we got both Bovine and this Tricia McLaughlin saying that. And she goes on to say, she says, Gerald, the men and women of ICE are mothers and fathers and sons and daughters. And, they're just out there trying to help you and all this kind of stuff. So don't demonize them. I say, well, you can make the same argument for the illegal aliens. I could say, well, they're just out there building homes and baking bread and all this other kind of stuff. And they are mothers and fathers and sons and daughters and all the rest of the stuff. Don't dehumanize them either. But the thing that concerns me, I'm much more worried about an illegal law enforcement organization than I am about illegal aliens. Even the criminal drug gangs that are out there don't have the kind of force multipliers that the federal government does. I think that is the most dangerous situation that we could be in, is to have a lawless, in-your-face federal government that says that they have absolute immunity to do whatever they wish. They can break into anybody's homes, and you better not try to stop them or they'll just kill you.
Yeah. Again, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, it's gone. And what she said, by the way, is perfect teacher kindergarten language.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what most of the people still in school.
Yeah.
That's what she said is like you're talking to kindergarten students.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's why they've got the schools.
Yeah, exactly.
Obey
I
authority.
hated every day of school.
Yeah, I did too.
I ran away from kindergarten at 4.5 years old and crossed the Boston Post Road in the Bronx. And that was the major artery back in the day before the highways between New York and Boston. I got left back in the 5th grade. I barely got out of high school. I had nightmares about school up into my 40s. I hated every day of it.
I did too, yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting. They said, well, we've had death threats against ICE agents up 8,000%. It's like, well, if you say that calling them Gestapos or kidnappers is a death threat, I don't know how you define death threat. But I did some research, Gerald, and I tried to find out, in terms of shootings, what have they been doing in terms of shootings? And they, of course, don't like to keep records about themselves. They hate for people to know what they're doing. That's why they threaten and attack people who are filming them. That's why they wear masks. But if you dig around, you can find that the ACLU and some of these other people who have sued them over some of the more obvious ones, you can see that prior to Trump getting in, they were having about 0 to 5 incidents a year. Okay, most of them at the border. And now it has moved deep inside the country. And under Trump, they've had 28 shootings in the last year, 8 of them fatal. That's what Trump is doing. They go from 0 to 5 to 28 in 1 year, and 8 of them fatal. That's the trend, isn't it?
Yep. And it's okay. You know why? Because Trump is a dictator.
Yeah.
Not my language, his. You ready?
That's right. Sometimes you need dictators.
The New York Times asked him if there were any limits to his global powers. Mr. Trump said, yeah, there is one thing. My own mind. It's the only thing that could stop me. I don't need international law. And then he came out before and he said that he was a dictator.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, he puts up memes of himself as a king.
Here we go. He said, sometimes you need a dictator, and I'm that dictator.
Yeah, that's right. I saw a sign that, you'll like this sign, Gerald. Somebody held this up, and it was faux, F-A-U-X, dash king. Faux King Trump.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's a good way to put it. But that's what he sees himself. That's what he boasts about doing.
Yeah, he calls himself a dictator.
That's right.
He says he doesn't need international law.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't need domestic law either. He's going to do whatever he wishes.
No.
Yeah.
Again, it's right. His words. He said, sometimes you need a dictator, and that I'm a dictator.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Absolutely. Well, Gerald, we do have this Kent State thing working. I want to play that as we go out. Like I said, I saw your cover for Trends Journal this week, and it reminded me of that. I looked up the recollection of Crosby, Stills, and Nash talking about what caused them to write that song, Ohio. And so we've got that. I was going to play that instead of the outro here that we have. But as soon as we finish the outro, I'm going to play that for people. And I want people to listen to this and think about it. We had Kent State. That was a situation where you had a bunch of untrained military people, which Trump wants to put out there. They're not trained for law enforcement, just like the ICE recruits that are out there and the Border Patrol people that are out there. They haven't been given proper training. And so they go out and they give them live ammunition like they give these yahoos that are out there. And so they killed 4 people, shot another 10 that were out there. And yet I would say that what we've got right now with Kent State 2.0 is even worse, because these are people who are coming into your home and they don't recognize any boundaries, any laws anywhere. This is premeditated. It's not something's done in the heat of the moment by some inexperienced, untrained soldiers from the National Guard. This is deliberate. It is calculated. It is premeditated. And that's what we've got here with Kent State 2.0. Thank you, Gerald, so much. And again, folks, trendsjournal.com. Take a look at the sample that's there. It's amazing how much stuff Gerald covers, and it's relevant. It's not fluff. And you can use the code NIGHT to save 10%. Thank you so much, Cheryl. Appreciate what you do.
Thank you, and thank you for all that you do. It's great being on with you.
Thank you.
We heard about it on the radio, we didn't believe it. And Neil and I were out driving around in one of his woodies, and we went over to this friend's house, and a friend came back from the store with a magazine with a girl kneeling over the dead kid. And I watched it hit Neil. He opened the magazine and looked at this thing and hit him in the heart. And I watched him write Ohio, right there. And I remember calling Nash and saying, hey, get a studio right now. We need a studio right now.
Crosby telling me that he saw Neil's face. He saw Neil go off into the woods. Neil came back an hour later and played in Ohio. Crosby called me and Stephen, we were in Los Angeles at the time. He said, Neil has written this song, you're not going to believe it. We've got to get in the studio right away. Stephen and I booked the record plant here in Hollywood. Neil and David came down. We went into the studio. We cut Ohio.
We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming. For dead in Ohio.
We cut the B-side, Find the Cost of Freedom. Ahmet Erdogan, who was the president of Atlantic at that time, was at the session. We gave him the master. He took it back to New York. That single was out on the street in 10 days. We killed our own single of Teach Your Children, which was my song. And we didn't care. We didn't care about any of those rules. We didn't care about the record company saying, listen, you don't want to do this. Let Teach Your Children get up there, do its thing, and then, a couple of months later, bring it out. What we wanted to do was bring it out instantly now. We were angry now. The kids were angry now. We wanted to speak and scream about this now. We wanted to put that record out on top of our other record, and we killed it stone dead, and we didn't care.
Cover was a picture of the Constitution with 4 bullet holes in it. And we got it out right away.
Gotta get down to it. Soldiers are cutting us down. Should have been done long ago. What if you knew her and found her dead on the ground? How could you run when you know?
And I'm screaming for and why at the end. I'm damn near in tears.